Yoo-hoo! Super! They fashion slay!
You do not need to do anything to be trans or non-binary.
Also, kink is not inherently sexual.
But this story is about a non-binary gerbil who wants to be a rhythmic gymnast.
All right, guys, up next, it's everybody's favorite part of the show because some of y'all are sadistic little guys out there. You like to watch me suffer. You get some sort of pleasure out of it. So this is, I hear from people all the time, everybody's favorite part of the podcast where I subject myself to torture and react to cringe left-wing LGBT TikToks. Up first, are they seriously still arguing that kink belongs at Pride?
The kink community belongs at Pride, full stop. They were an integral part of combating the AIDS crisis. Also, kink is not inherently sexual, and just existing as a kinky person in public does not mean that you are performing a scene. If you don't like how someone's dressed, look away.
I have a lot of problems with this, but I also just have confusion. Did this person really just say that kink isn't sexual? Then what is it, babe? My thing is that I really don't care what adults do in the privacy of their own bedrooms, so knock yourself out. But kink has nothing to do with being gay or being bisexual or lesbian or even being trans. Straight people have kinks too, so don't conflate it with our immutable characteristics, your personal preferences and things that you're into. Like these are separate, just maybe don't conflate them, that please and thank you. Secondly, you gotta choose one, either kink at Pride or kids at Pride. Because right now, people like this are trying to have both, and that is not okay, not appropriate, and giving the entire community a terrible look and a bad rap. Finally, if you're going out there in your kink and fetish gear at Pride, you're essentially subjecting the public, a bunch of people who didn't consent and aren't really interested in that, to being a part of that with you or to seeing you in your gear or whatever. It's like, and that's not really cool in my book. If you and your people who are into that want to go do that, knock yourself out. I really don't care. But I don't really think it's fair to force that onto other people who just want to go to a gay pride parade, that they have to be forced into observing or being around unrelated sexual fetishes. Like, can we just not? Can we not? Up next, try to keep up with this gender-confused TikToker.
Gender and presentation do not go hand in hand. Gender is a feeling you have inside, and how you present is an outward expression of your internal feeling of gender. You do not need to do anything to be trans or non-binary. You don't need surgery, you don't need hormones, you don't need to change your name. You can look the same way you do now, use the same pronouns you do now, and be trans or non-binary. You also don't need to disclose your gender to anyone. Discovering your gender is for you. Embrace the change and don't be afraid of it.
Y'all, can y'all keep up with this? Does this make any sense to you? Because I'm literally immersed in this stuff for my job, and it's not even mathing. The math is not mathing for me, babe. What's sad to me is that with this kind of woke word salad, they're actually undercutting the existence and validity of legitimate transsexual people who want to blend in. And guess what? Key to their idea of trans is the idea that you have to transition to be trans, because you're only trans if you have gender dysphoria, which means you experience a severe discomfort between your birth sex, your biological sex, and the sex that you would like to be perceived as, or to do the things associated with, or live as. That's what being trans means. If anybody who just feels like it with no criteria or action needed can be trans, then it's a meaningless category, one totally unworthy of legitimacy, respect, or protection. You sure you want to go down this path, babe? Because you're not doing your own cause much of a service with this kind of incoherent nonsense. Up next, here's a TikToker's guide to talking to pansexuals.
Things not to say to pansexuals. I'm watching you. So, basically you're just saying that you're bisexual? Does this mean you're attracted to pans? Are we still asking this in 2022? Do we still not know what pansexuality is? Come on.
All right, so I will admit that the second one is a cringe joke that was really never funny, but it certainly isn't funny now that we've heard it 10,000 times. So like people should probably give that one a rest. But the first one is an entirely legitimate question to ask, because there is in fact no difference between pansexuals and bisexuals. Because sexual orientation is about biological sex, not gender identity. There are only two biological sexes. So if you're attracted to people in either of them, you are bisexual. I know they say pansexual means that you're attracted to people regardless of gender or regardless of sex. Well, there's only two sexes. So that's still the same thing as bisexual. I think, though, what the pansexual movement and label has emerged from is this desire to just, like, bisexual is so blasé. It's so like, oh, 1990s or 2000s or whatever. It's not really woke enough, or it doesn't get you enough oppression Olympics points on the oppressed scale. So they have to come up with some new thing to label themselves. It's just an outgrowth of the obsession with labels and the making of victimhood into a currency. Of course, when you do that, you're going to have people counterfeiting. I couldn't care less if somebody is bisexual, but don't just kind of gaslight us or insult our intelligence by insisting that being bisexual is actually called something totally different and unique that is just actually the same exact thing in practice. Maybe just don't do that. Okay? Up next, here's how this teacher teaches children about non-binary.
I think that teaching our children to have empathy and respect for others is the number one most important thing we can teach them. So let me show you one of my favorite books I use to teach inclusivity and empathy in my classroom. It's called Peanut Goes for the Gold, and Jonathan Van Ness is the author. They are one of my favorite human beings on the earth. You might know them from Queer Eye. But this story is about a non-binary gerbil who wants to be a rhythmic gymnast, and they do all the things, cartwheels, ribbon twirling, hula hooping, to meet their goal. And when they get to the gymnastics meet, they forgot to tie their shoes, and they trip and fall, but they ended up turning it into a magnificent move that wins them first place. But it's really just about how everybody has a different way of doing things, and that's okay. And we all just need to be true to our true selves. And it refers to Peanut as they or their in the story because they're non-binary. And when it comes down to it, if teaching children to be respectful of others' identities and calling them what they prefer to be called is the worst thing I do as an educator, then I'd say I'm doing pretty darn good.
I'm not so sure I would say that, girly. You should not be using the position of power and privilege and authority granted to you as a teacher who's entrusted with people's most precious thing in their life, their children, to push nonsensical left-wing gobbledygook on impressionable young minds. This is really bad. Non-binary isn't a coherent concept. It doesn't make sense even to rational adults who do their best to try to comprehend it. You are only going to confuse young children by putting this seed in their mind, and you're also kind of telling them something actually very regressive about gender and gender norms. Well, this gerbil is a non-binary, is a they-them, because the gerbil doesn't like things that are boys' things and girl things. Oh, what are these boy and girl things, you say? Well, the gerbil doesn't like dresses or makeup or sports or guns. So you're literally just pushing sex stereotypes and outdated gender roles and misogynistic concepts, basically, that girls have to be feminine and girly or else they're not a real girl. How many tomboys or effeminate little boys are you going to hopelessly confuse with this nonsense? Just let kids be kids, man. And when they get older, any of them have struggled with their gender identity organically, and they come and they want to be identified as non-binary or whatever, deal with it then. But don't start pushing nonsense on them when they're so young they're still reading picture books. Come on, this is crazy. And I really struggle to imagine a better way to piss off normal Americans than to push propaganda on their little children. You want to trigger a backlash to the LGBT community? Keep doing stuff like this, girly. Keep doing it. You're doing great if that is your ultimate goal. All right, finally, a video from my favorite TikToker, Jeffrey Marsh. Let's go.
Yoo-hoo! Super! They fashion slay! Ba, 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 ba. Pow! Jiggity, jiggity, jiggity. Have you been nice to a trans person today? Have you complimented someone, been sociable to an LGBTQ? So much of our existence and day-to-day experience can be about feeling isolated and like we're not included And you can change that. You can be kind. People write me all the time, how should I treat trans people? Like everybody else. Be inclusive, be kind, be sociable, be nice. Thanks.
So the first part of this video just made me a little uncomfy, but you know what? It's cringe, but knock yourself out, I guess. Do whatever you want. I'm more interested in the latter part of this video where Jeffrey encourages people to be kind and sociable to trans people. Have you been nice to a trans person today? Well, babe, I'm not particularly nice or sociable to anyone except my dog. So the answer to your question is probably no. But I wanted to talk about this because I love the inherent contradiction between the things that Jeffrey and other activists like this person, what they'll all say. Go out of your way to be nice and kind and accommodating to trans people, but also just treat them like anyone else. Well, which one is it? I believe in the latter approach, right? Of just treating everybody the same and assimilating and all that. But they only want to believe in that when it's convenient, when it's time for affirmative action or identity politics or special shout outs and extra niceties, then identity is very important. But when it's time that they just want, in that instance, to be treated like everyone else, that's what they want. Well, Cupcake, you can't have the best of both worlds. Anyway, I can feel a headache coming on, and I don't have any Advil in the house, so I'm going to have to stop it there for the insane left-wing LGBT TikToks. If you got a kick out of this, if you found it interesting or insightful, and if you're here, you probably did, or at the very least, you just enjoy watching me suffer, drop a like and comment with your thoughts, and maybe consider subscribing on YouTube or following on Facebook. Or if you're listening on audio podcasts, rating and reviewing, it would be a huge help. Now, I'll see you all next week on Damage Control. But if you're not sick of me yet and you want more of my content, you can go here or here to check out some of my other recent videos you might just enjoy.